Welcome to Genetics Run Wild, where you'll get the one-on all things genetic.
In this episode, we will be talking about heredity, selective breeding, and genetic variation on account of the movie you just watched, Designer Dogs.
First, we must learn the basics.
Hey Maria, what's up?
Nothing much, just reading about genetics. Hey, Yasu, what does the word genetics remind you?
Well, it has the words genes in it.
Exactly. Genetics is all about genes.
I'm liking the subject already.
Oh. No.
This is nice.
Not these genes.
Really? Well, what other genes are there? I mean, these are really nice.
They are beautiful, but I'll show you what genes we're talking about.
Okay.
Genetics is the study of genes and heredity. The first person to study this was Gregor Mendel. He studied pea plants and discovered that similar traits were passed down from parents to offspring. Heredity is when organisms can pass down their own traits, which are physical characteristics, to their offspring, such as eye color and hair color. They are passed down from parents to offspring through genes.
Genes are segments of DNA that codes for specific traits, which are characteristic like hair type and skin color.
DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, includes the information that determines these traits. It is found in the nucleus of the cell.
So how are traits passed down from parent to offspring?
Well, the human body produces many cells. Cells that are responsible for creating life are called gametes, or sex cells. Unlike other cells, gametes are haploid cells. This means that they only contain half the number of chromosomes as each parent, which is 23.
Chromosomes are tightly coiled DNA found in the nucleus during cell division. Gametes are formed during the process of cell division called meiosis. Meiosis occurs in the testes of males and the ovaries of females.
The parent cells from which sex cells are made are called diploid cells, or somatic cells. These cells contain a complete set of chromosomes, which is 46, 23 from each parent. These chromosomes are arranged in homologous pairs, which are identical chromosomes that have the same genes. This means that there are 23 pairs of chromosomes. They form an organism's karyotype, or picture of their genetic makeup. The 23rd pair determines the sex of the child. XY stands for boy, and XX stands for girl.
In meiosis, the number of chromosomes are reduced by half. This means that the final product will have 23 chromosomes. This happens because a cell divides twice. Before this occurs, DNA is replicated in the parent cell, so it ends up having 92 chromosomes. In the first phase, homologous pairs separate into single chromosomes, leaving us with two cells that have 46 chromosomes in each.
In the second phase, chromosomes separate into chromatids, which are the arms and legs of the chromosome. This forms 4 cells with 23 chromosomes each, aka our gametes. The resulting cells will have chromatids, with a variation of genetic sequences thanks to random chromosome segregation, or separation. During that process, sister chromatids may become entangled, and the segments become incorporated in their homologous partner. This is called translocation. This increases the variety of genetic variation in a zygote.
What's a zygote?
A zygote is a fertilized egg. This is when the sperm of a male fuses with the egg of a female. It is called fertilization. The zygote will eventually become a baby.
So babies with the same parents look alike, right?
Well, that's not the case. Thanks to genetic variation, we all have our own unique traits.
We are unique because of different combinations of alleles, which are different forms of genes that codes for certain traits. For example, one type of gene determines height. One allele could code for shortness, and another allele could code for tallness.
Exactly. Take these dogs, for example. They're all Chihuahuas, but they look somewhat different because some have long hair and others have short hair.
This is because they receive different alleles for hair length.
Hey, did you know that you could predict an organism's combination of alleles using a magical square?
You mean a Punnett square?
Magical square sounds better.
Well, it's called the Punnett square.
Fine then.
The combination of alleles you were talking about is actually called a genotype, which is a person's genetic makeup. A genotype is represented by 2-letter sequences. These letters represent different types of alleles. They can be capital or lowercase, depending on which one is a dominant trait and which one is a recessive trait. Dominant traits are represented by capital letters, and they are stronger, or have a stronger chance of appearing in a phenotype, which is an organism's physical feature that can be detected by the five senses such as eye color, hair color, and even scent. In some cases, for example, brown eyes are dominant over blue eyes, so brown eyes appear more often than blue eyes.
The recessive traits are represented by lower case letters and are weaker than the dominant traits, so they have a lesser chance of appearing in the phenotype.
You would use the first letter of a dominant trait. For example, if a dominant trait is brown eyes and a recessive trait is green eyes, you would use the letter B. Now back to Punnett squares. A Punnett square is a square that's divided up into 4 smaller squares. For example, your parents' genotypes are Big B, and little b, little b. To determine the offspring's genotype, you would write one parent's genotype on the top and another parent's genotype on the left-hand side. Then you just bring the letters down and across. The letters on top should be written into the 2 boxes below them. The letters on the left should be written on the 2 squares to the right. The genotypes in the box determine the phenotypes of the offspring of the 2 parents. The 4 boxes represent percentages out of 100, which means each box is 25%. You can determine what percentage of the offspring will have a specific genotype.
So for example, if Big B stands for brown eyes and little b stands for green eyes, then in this case, the percentage of children who will have brown eyes is 100%, because brown eyes is a dominant trait, and the percentage of children who will have green eyes is 0%. Alleles can be represented by either lowercase letters or capital letters. You can determine an organism's phenotype by looking at their genotype. You can either have 2 capital letters, which represents dominant traits. This is called homozygous dominant, homo meaning the same. Here, the dominant trait is seen in the phenotype. A genotype can also have 2 lowercase letters representing recessive trait. This is called homozygous recessive. Here, it is seen in the phenotype. In a heterozygous, there's 1 lowercase and 1 capital letter. The dominant trait will appear in this phenotype because it's stronger. In some cases, the offspring gets neither dominant or recessive. This is called codominant when the 2 traits are combined.
Wow, so that explains why everyone looks so different, because of all the different combinations of our genes. So that explains why we have our own unique style.
Yeah! Well, so now that you have the basics down, it's time to learn how selective breeding impacts genetic variation, and how dog breeders select or design their own dogs. Dog trainers use selective breeding when they want certain traits to be passed down to their offspring. Trainers use selective breeding when they want certain traits to be passed down to their offspring. They use it when they breed 2 specific dogs, such as a Labrador and a Poodle, to get a hybrid puppy, whose traits are a combination of its parents. There's a limited amount of genetic variation in selective breeding because dog breeders actually decide what they want their dogs to look like. This is known as inbreeding.
A pedigree is like a family tree that looks at the genetic traits of an organism's ancestors. It's a tool that's used to determine whether or not a dog will have a genetic defect.
An example of this would be inbreeding a large generation of purebreds who have had a blood disease.
Even though the disease didn't appear in their ancestors, a limited and narrow selection of breeding allows the chance of hemophilia to appear in one of the later generations.
We hope we answered all of your questions about genetics and dog breeding.
Until next time.
Bye!
Hey Maria.
Hey Ashley.
What's up?
Nothing much, just reading about genetics.
Oh! Oopsie. I forgot. Oh well, check it. Okay, get ready. What's the question? Check it. Okay, let's try this again.
So how are traits passed down from parent to
Okay, let's.
So how are traits passed down from parent to offspring? My eyes look really small.
Hey, did you know that you could predict the possible combinations of an organism's alleles?
Change the effects. Are you okay, Maria?
Hey, did you know that you could predict the combination of an organism's... I keep saying... Okay. Hey! Hey, did you know that you could predict an organism's possible outcomes? Just kidding.
We are unique because of the different combinations of alleles.